The iPad Air 5 is a confusing product, and I don't mean that it's hard to use or that it's not a good iPad. It's very good and it's super easy to use. I just think that it's going to confuse people. I also get some questions about creaking and the build quality, so I tested 3 different iPad Air 5s. I compared them to my iPad Air 4, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, Apple had an interesting challenge with this iPad. They needed to upgrade the already impressive iPad Air 4, and at the same time, they needed to keep enough separation from the 11-inch iPad Pro. When we look at the size and the design, we're getting the same exact iPad that we got with the Air 4. It's a premium looking tablet with small bezels all the way around, squared off edges, and the same 10.9-inch display with rounded corners. We have volume up and down controls on the right, a power button at the top, 4 speaker grills, and an upgraded USB-C port at the bottom with a maximum transfer speed of 10 gigabits per second. This is twice the speed that we were getting with the iPad Air 4, but it's only a quarter of the transfer speed of the Thunderbolt/USB 4 port on the 11-inch iPad Pro. The power button on the iPad Air 5 also includes Apple's newer implementation of Touch ID, same as what we had with the previous model, and of course the iPad Pro comes with Face ID instead. When I got my first iPad Air 5, it felt exactly like the previous model in terms of build quality, and my assumption was that Apple just used the same frame as with the Air 4. Then I got a few questions in one of my videos about whether I had any creaking or build quality issues with mine, and I decided to do some testing. The majority of the time I have my iPad in a case, and this one from Zugu is an absolute beast, and I was thinking maybe that's why I didn't notice any creaking. Ultimately, I ended up having to buy a second iPad and then trading it in for a third model for a completely different reason, which I'll talk about later on in the video. So I took all 3 tablets and I started pressing everywhere on the back, trying to make them creak, and I couldn't hear anything. I then took my iPad Air 4 and I did several blind tests versus the iPad Air 5 as far as sound or bending. And again, I didn't notice any difference. Now, just to be clear about bending, I'm not saying that you can't bend this tablet. Like, I'm sure I could, just like I could bend any other tablet that I own. But what I'm saying is that in no reasonable way that I would ever use, store, or transport the Air 5 would I worry about it bending. I'm also saying that at least with the 3 iPad Air 5 models that I tested, I had no build quality issues, and there was nothing that would suggest to me that I should have any long-term concerns about structural integrity. Now, I know that's not the super controversial results. It would get me all those clicks and views, but I always do my best to share my actual user experience with you, and this was it. Now, going back to the case that I was using, if you're not new to my channel, then you know that I'm not the most careful person with my tablets or my phones, so I'm always gonna have them in a case. Now, I've been using the Alpha from Zugu. It's an absurdly well-made case to the point where they will actually pay your AppleCare repair fees if your iPad gets damaged while you're using this case. Now, the outer shell has a premium feel and a leather texture to it. The interior is microfiber to protect your iPad, and there are airflow vents built into the back panel which allow heat to escape. Now, the bumper itself feels very solid, and at the same time it feels like it would give a little if you dropped it, and that's good because it will absorb some of the impact instead of transferring it to your iPad. All the ports, buttons, the speakers, and the cameras are accessible, and the fit is very snug. Now, Zugu came out with some new colors for this case. This slate one is one of my favorites. You can go with the brown if you want more of an organic look. There are a ton of other colors on their website, and of course you can go with matte black if you want that Batman look. It has a sleep cover, so the iPad Air 5 automatically wakes up and goes to sleep when you open and close the case. It has 8 different magnetically secured height adjustments on the back, so you can always have your iPad at just the right angle. I also needed a case that accommodates the 2nd generation Apple Pencil. Now, you can either have it protected on the side where it's wirelessly charging, or you can use this protective elastic sleeve on the back for more security while you're transporting. One bonus feature is that the back is magnetic, so you can actually put this on your fridge, won't scratch anything, and it's very secure. I'll put links in the description to where you can grab one, and let me know what you think when you get yours. When we look at the display of the iPad Air 5, we're getting a 10.9-inch Retina display with a resolution of 2360 by 1640, 500 nits of brightness, and 264 pixels per inch. It's a P3 display, so it has excellent color reproduction, and that way you can use it for photo and video editing. It's also a True Tone display, so it can detect the color temperature of the ambient light and then make adjustments to keep white looking white rather than yellow or blue. This is the same 60 Hertz display that we had on the iPad Air 4, so there weren't any upgrades there. And if you're looking for 120 Hertz, then you'll need to move up to the 11-inch iPad Pro, which has Apple's Pro Motion. If you give me the choice, I'm always going to want 120 Hertz if I can get it. And at the same time, 60 Hertz is not something that's ever been an issue for me with the iPad Air 5 or the iPad Air 4 for that matter. Now, battery life was something that was a bit of a concern for me because I assumed that the M1 chip, which I'll get to in a minute, would use up more battery because it's so powerful. Now, what's nice is that it can use the high efficiency cores for basic tasks and that way save on battery life. Now, of course, if you push it, if you're rendering video or doing anything that maxes out the multi-core performance, then the battery is used up more quickly. So far, I haven't noticed a meaningful difference between what I had with the iPad Air 4 when it was new, but I'm curious to see what happens over the next couple of months, and let me know if you want me to do a battery test. Now, both the 64 and 256 gigabyte models of the iPad Air 5 come with the same M1 chip and 8 gigabytes of RAM. For single-core performance, we're looking at 1720, and for multi-core performance, we're getting super impressive 7220. And to be able to get this level of performance for $599 is pretty remarkable. But there is one thing that's holding this iPad back, and that's storage. You see, I first got the 64 gigabyte model, which was the same as what I had on the iPad Air 4. And even though the iPad Air 4 wasn't full yet, it still had too much on it to allow me to copy the apps and data to my new iPad Air 5. So I ended up having to get the 256 gigabyte model in order to transfer everything. So with this M1 chip and Apple's outstanding long-term support, this iPad Air 5 should last me for a very long time, which is why offering a 64 gigabyte model was so frustrating to me. We're using the M1 chip, so it's the same as what we have on the 11-inch iPad Pro, which starts at 128 gigabytes, and it has a 512 gig model, both of which come with 8 gigabytes of RAM, just like the iPad Air 5. So Apple could have used that exact same chip in this iPad and given users storage options that are much better suited for a device that will be plenty powerful more than 5 years from now. Now, remember what I said at the beginning. Apple was facing an interesting challenge in improving the previous model and staying far enough away from the iPad Pro. I think the meaningful advantages of the 11-inch iPad Pro come in areas other than processing power, and I cover all of that in my comparison. And I would have loved to see the iPad Air 5 start at 128 gigabytes and then an upgraded 512 gig option. I do want to mention that when you hear people say, why get the 256 gigabyte iPad Air 5 when you can get an 11-inch iPad Pro for an extra $50, that's not totally fair because that's the 128 gigabyte model. To get 256 gigs on the 11-inch iPad Pro, you need to jump up to $899, which is $150 more, and I talk about who I think should do that in my comparison. Now, looking at multitasking, the iPad Air 5 comes with iPadOS 15, so you have all the new features like split view, slide over windows, and a new multitasking menu. You can also use it as an additional display for your Mac, iMac, or MacBook with a feature called Sidecar. It's something that I do all the time, and if you have an iPad and you're not using it, definitely watch that video to learn more. And when we look at the camera system, there was no upgrade to the rear-facing camera, so it's the same 12 megapixel camera that we have on the iPad Air 4. It does get to take advantage of the new ISP or image signal processor on the M1 chip, which results in improved image quality. Apple did upgrade the front-facing camera to the newer 12 megapixel camera that we see on all the other current iPad models. And this brought better image quality and center stage to the iPad Air 5. In case you haven't seen this feature, essentially the ultra-wide camera can identify and track a subject as it moves around and then zoom in and out to make sure that it's properly framed. It's great for video calls when you're walking around, and it's definitely an advantage over the previous model. As far as the speakers go, we see 4 speaker grills, but there are still only 2 speakers, one on each side. The audio quality is actually quite good, and yet this was another opportunity where Apple could have made a small upgrade. Now, when we look at the accessories from Apple, we can use the smaller Magic Keyboard and the 2nd generation Apple Pencil, which pairs and charges on the side of the iPad. There were weren't any upgrades in terms of latency or the functions of the Apple Pencil, and I'm super curious to see what they do with the 3rd generation pencil. Like, what do you guys think about adding some wireless functions? Of course, there are a ton of other accessories that I use with this iPad, and I'll have that video ready for you very soon. So why do I think the iPad Air 5 might be confusing? By bringing the M1 chip down to the mid-tier iPad, Apple is saying, look at how much processing power you can get for $599. But I would guess that your average iPad Air user is looking for more storage rather than more processing power. Otherwise, they'd be looking at the iPad Pro. And I wonder if most iPad Air users would prefer the A15 Bionic chip from the iPad Mini 6 with more storage instead of the M1 chip with more processing power and more RAM. But let me know what you think. Overall, the iPad Air 5 is a very good iPad. It's better than the iPad Air 4, which was already one of my favorites. You can still get a 256 gigabyte iPad Air 4 for $649, which I think is a great value. Of course, if you want a more powerful chip, twice the RAM, a faster port, a better front-facing camera, and 5G, get the iPad Air 5. And if you think you might want to go Pro, watch this comparison right here. Hopefully this video was helpful. Click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.